Hey guys, what's going on? Coming back for another movie review. You guys at this point have probably seen the News of the World movie review as well as the One Night in Miami movie review. Hope you guys are enjoying those reviews and my rant on the Locked Down movie review. I just got done watching another film that's come out recently, and that is Outside the Wire, which is a Netflix film. The A new 4K television set that my house just got, and um, just testing out a couple things, obviously with the new television and everything. And I decided, because I was desperate to watch another movie because this time of year there's not a lot of films that come out. Of course, I was just making up for a lot of the 2020 films that I've missed, but in terms of 2021, in typical January fashion, there's not a lot of films to watch. Um, and of course, amidst in the pandemic, you still want to keep yourself engaged in some form of, in some form. So I decided to watch Outside the Wire, which is another Netflix sci-fi film starring Anthony Mackie, and to explain the movie would be just a chore in and of itself. And I really, Netflix has a reputation with making such disposable films. They have a reputation for it, and they also have a reputation for making a lot of good films. The Irishman, for example, I think is very good, even though it was a failure financially for Netflix, which we'll talk about later when we do the collab, another news collab video, because I have a story that I would like to talk about um, in terms of Irishman and Netflix's acquisitions. Um, and um, but yeah, but beyond that financial failure, The Irishman was still a great film. I love The Irishman. Um, they also did Roma, which I thought was amazing. They did trying to think of other films that I can name off right off the bat here. Shit. I'm trying to think of some other ones. It'll come to me. But Marriage Story, my favorite movie of last year, was also from Netflix. So they have made some really good films. I mean, or they've at least financed a lot of really good films. Now, when Netflix themselves actually comes in and makes the movies themselves, you either get some hits or you get some misses. A great sci-fi film, I would say, from Netflix was I Am Mother. I actually quite enjoyed that film a bit. I recommend that film a lot. Outside the Wire, however, is well, another added example of Netflix making disposable movies because this is disposable. I mean, um, to put it in a small synopsis, Outside the Wire takes place in the future, 2036, I believe it said in the film, and it follows a military, forget the name of the pilots that shoot down, that order um, like bombs and stuff. I'm not sure what they call those people. I forgot what they said in the film, but he fucks up and he makes a wrong order, and he then is sentenced to work with this AI played by Anthony Mackie, and they go on this mission that unravels with twists and stuff. And if that in and of itself doesn't sound cohesive or doesn't make a lot of sense, well, that's pretty much how the movie felt to me, because the first thing that I was getting right off the bat is that the story it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense that this would become a punishment, um, or this would be like, oh, you don't want to be around this guy, and some story threads just don't make a lot of sense, and some of the twists just feel very unjustified, and really, the movie feels like it just feels like it's just overstaying its welcome. Like there's a point where I thought, oh, the movie's gonna end here, and I was like, all right. I mean, I was starting to develop my thoughts, and then it kept going for another 15 minutes, or yeah, 15, 20 minutes, and I was like, you could have got rid of those last 20 minutes, and we could have stopped at a certain point, um, because throughout that journey, you are given some really awkward action because the movie does not know how to handle action. It doesn't know how to properly set up suspense or really make you feel engaged within that action. This has like this hyper speed style of filming the scene, of filming action, coupled with like anime type fight choreography. It sounds interesting on paper, but it does not create anything but distortion, and it just makes you feel completely out. It throws you out completely. Um, of the experience. And um, the editing within that action is also really choppy. Like when it's not actiony, it actually feels a little bit more coherent. Like the editing seems a little bit less. The editing seems calmer, um, but within the action, it's extremely choppy. And the shots that they choose within the action are completely useless or just amateur, in my personal opinion. So the thing that people really like about the movie, I actually really didn't like about the movie. I thought the action just did not work for me. It felt completely out of place and just distorting and completely distracting for me, in my particular opinion. And the story, I would say, is standard. It's predictable. There's some twists that you don't see coming, but they're just absolutely unearned. They feel unnecessary. Um, like we could have ended the movie at a certain point, and I would have been like, okay, but then it keeps going, and then you're like, why? Why are we go? Why are we still going? Um, and as you hear with AIs, you also come to expect some the visual effects. And I gotta say, the visual effects are strange. I wouldn't say they're bad, but they're strange. They're not like the designs themselves for some of these AI robot designs. They're they're interesting designs. I would yes, a lot of comparisons have come to Chappie and stuff. They do resemble the Chappie designs a little bit, um, but they work fine in their own right. Um, but the biggest faults to the film, in my particular opinion, is the leads. I thought the leads were miscast, in all honesty. I mean, they have decent chemistry together. I would say that they seem okay together, but they don't match the characters or the development that they're provided. I never bought for 1 second that Anthony Mackie was an AI. I never bought that. I mean, Mackie himself is charming in the film. He's charming in general as a performer, but our main protagonist, the person that we're following throughout the film, this kid character, he is so stiff and completely out of his element in both story and as a performer. Because, narratively speaking, why would the army assign him for this? He's trigger happy, he's cocky, he's unprofessional. It makes no sense why they would pick him. He serves really no purpose to the story, rather than just, adding. Um, he really doesn't serve a big element towards the story until the really end, very much to the end. Which again, those last 20 minutes, it just feels like the writers went, oh shit, we didn't really give an arc to our protagonist. Let's just add some twists along the way, to make it seem more, so we can try to save our ass a little bit. And it doesn't really save their ass. It more or less just further pits this film into boredom, because I was bored with the twist. Because at that point I was like, I could care less. I was at that point I was like, I don't care. I want this movie to end because it doesn't. It has conceptually an interesting idea, and that's, I would say, the strength of the film is that conceptually it's interesting. It clearly is inspired by 80s action films like Terminator and obviously RoboCop, but um, I would say conceptually it has a fair idea at play here, and the engagement, I would say, is is okay. There's some engagement there and there with, again, Anthony Mackie being a charming performer, and again, conceptually there is some engagement within that as well. But um, ultimately, those last 20 minutes, just I honestly don't know why they're in the movie. I mean, yes, the twist do add something narratively to the story, but they don't really add anything for my engagement, my care, and my investment. Because at that point, I just want the movie to end. I want the movie to end and just move on. Because it pretty much is trying to make up for the first two acts. Because the first two acts, you don't have nothing for the protagonist. You have nothing for the audience to see the growth in this protagonist. And then for like the last 20 minutes, like, oh shit, we forgot to we forgot to create an arc for our protagonist. So let's add these last 20 minutes in, and then it'll look like the character went through an arc, but really he really didn't. You know, it just felt like they just kind of rushed out those last 20 minutes, um, and tried to make up and try to create an actual interesting story, but at the end of the day, it I'll put it this way. Outside the Wire, to me, it looks like a concept for a feature, because for me, it never earned its development. or its immersion, for it really does not have the creative ability to satisfy the viewer. It really doesn't. I mean, it just acts more as a paycheck for Mackie versus a crafted accomplishment. Because to put it short, guys, it's unconvincing and it never earns its place, even if it's conceptually interesting on paper, that is.